Well, money doesn't grow on trees, right? You ever heard that? Pennies don't rain down from heaven, right? Money can't buy you happiness. Got money to burn? Money talks. And you know how that one ends. Any of those sound familiar? Never heard them? Oh, you have. Oh, you have. Any of them ring true? Maybe? Nah, not this group, right? Not this group. Anybody have any fear at all around money in your life? Nah, not this group, right? No. Too much? Too little? I'll never have enough? Those are all some of our cultural fears around money, aren't they? Yeah, they sure are. How about people with it? What do you think about them? People without it. What do you think about them? Again, all these cultural things, universal values and beliefs around money that we have. And they're all individual, aren't they? They're all individual. I couldn't tell you what any of you thought about any of those things that I just said. Only you know what those thoughts are. Only you know what those are, what might have bubbled up, what memories from the past, from your childhood or whatever, might have come forth as some of those things were being said. Money doesn't grow on trees was one of my dad's favorites when we left the lights on. Don't have stock in the power company, turn the lights off, right? Yeah, those childhood things. I haven't heard that for a lot of decades. So what cliches run through your head and your belief system when we talk about the idea of money? Well, you're in luck because October is our annual prosperity series, and this month we're talking about money for the entire month. And I am basing it on Lynn Twist's book called The Soul of Money. The Soul of Money. Anybody read this one yet? Yeah. It's an interesting exploration about universal ideas about money and both ends of the spectrum and everything in between. So we're going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive in that. We're using science of mind principles and as well as the law of attraction. And Karen Rousseau will be here with us this month, also on the 21st, to bring her Money Keys ministry in-house. So a lot of information around prosperity principles and money for this month. Now, Lynn's book is about her life and her journey in working with something called the Hunger Project. And she's been working with this for over 40 years. She wrote this book. She's been all around the world with it. And she's learned a lot of lessons and values and discovered some of these universal beliefs around money, irrespective of how much or how little we have. And I found that a fascinating twist in her book. Gosh, that's her last name. That wasn't intended. So, again, we'll be combining our science of mind and the law of attraction. Just see if we can find some peace and some balance around this stuff called money. Things are pretty good right now in our economy and our businesses and so forth. But during the recession, it was a little rocky for us. And we may have some distant memories about how life was during those days. So remember those beliefs and these beliefs and where we are in all of this. And that's going to be our journey, our spiritual journey for this month. So have you ever thought about money as something spiritual? We usually don't. A lot of people think this idea of separation of God and money, that those are totally separate. Totally separate. We don't think about those in the same context. You just give your money to the church, right? That's a belief that many of us were raised with. That the church just wanted to get into your pockets, so to speak. Yeah? No? Congratulations if you don't have those beliefs. You may have heard something out in the ethers about money is the root of all evil. Anybody have that one running around in their head? Do you know that's a misquote? The quote is actually the love of money is the root of all evil. That's the quote from the Bible from 1 Timothy. And that shifts the perspective, doesn't it? Because really what that's telling us is that when we put money as the idol, as the false idol, and give it the power, as opposed to having money be the tool that we have power over, that's where we can get into that idea of worshiping money as opposed to allowing it to be a tool in our life. Allowing it to be a tool in our life. So our core question today that we're going to be exploring is, what is the value of money for you? How do you value money? And again, I think we all have some different values about what money means to us, depending on our experience, our background, where we are economically, socially, whatever it might be. I think we all have a little different perspective on how we value money. Does a $100 bill have more value than a book? This book. Well, some might say that book, even though I think the list price is $20, versus a $100 bill, it's all paper. One's one little piece of paper printed on two sides, has an old guy's picture on it and some numbers. The other one's got lots of numbers in the book. It's still printed on paper. It's got more words than that one has. Probably more numbers than that one has. But it's only valued at $20, and this is valued at $100. Now, some of us in the room would say that's got a heck of a lot more value than this, because of what's in that book, right? What's contained in it, the knowledge that's in it that we can then use in our life going forward to impact who we be. But there are many people on our planet that would say that's got a lot more value, right? That's got a lot more value. So what is the value of money? As you know, we were in Mexico last week, and we were given a lunch check, and the sandwich was 170 pesos. Whoa, 170 pesos, that's a lot of money, right? Until it was like, oh wait, they don't have the same value of money there that we do. Let's see, the exchange rate was about 17, so that makes my sandwich $10. Oh, so I had to translate from their value system to my value system to make it make sense for me, and then go back to their value system to pay them, right? And to leave an appropriate tip. Yeah, so what is the value, right, of their pink piece of paper versus our green piece of paper? Well, there's a big difference in those two values, even though they both have the same $50 number on them, right? Do you see how we all have different values on money? Different values on money. What's yours? Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever thought about what is the value of money to me? Is every piece of money precious? Or do you let pennies go and dump them in a drawer someplace or whatever? They're not that valuable, right? I just save the hundreds. I just save the 50s. I don't carry those ones anymore. What's the value of money to you? What's the value of money to you? What does it mean? Does money mean freedom? I can do anything I want to do. If I've got enough money, I can travel, I can buy. Or does it mean bondage? The more money I have, the more people I have to manage, the more I have to be afraid and hoard and hold on to and protect and be concerned about. Freedom or bondage? Peace. Whew, I've got enough money, I'm okay. Or people are going to judge me if I have enough money. People will judge me. These are all beliefs, aren't they? These are all beliefs that we can have. And I have to work hard for my money. Harder than anybody else. I have to put in more hours. I have to have more production than anybody else to make enough money. Or is money simply a reward for a job well done? For sharing my gifts and sharing my talents? Where do we land on all of these values? So the talk today is entitled Love Lies and the Great Awakening. And this is from Lynn's book. It's the first section of her book, and she's telling the story of she and her husband. and how they were back in the 70s. He was employed by a somewhat new, I don't know if it was a company that was becoming very successful, and he was required to travel, and she had the ability to travel with him. So they were doing an awful lot of travel, and their income was increasing, and they were able to afford a nanny. They had 3 children, and they were able to afford a nanny to stay with the kids, and they knew they would always come home to the kids. And the kids were their priority, right? Well, as they began to acquire more wealth and new network of friends and so forth, they began to go out for fancy dinners. And at these fancy dinners, people would start ordering fancy wines. And they realized they didn't know anything about wine, so they started learning about wines. And as they began to learn about wines, they decided that they needed a wine cellar. Oh, gee, our house is not big enough for a wine cellar. Let's buy a new house with a wine cellar, okay? Well, now they've got the new house. So they've got the new house, and the new house has walls, and the walls are empty, and the house needs art. Well, they've got to have nice art. So now they're going out and they're looking at nice art, and as they learn about art, they need nicer art, finer art, right, for their walls. Well, then they begin to realize that my clothes don't quite match with everybody else's that I'm hanging out with now, so I need new clothes. Well, I need new shoes to go with those new clothes. Oh, well, my watch is not quite up to speed with everybody else's. I need some more accessories, too, to go with those new clothes, right? You see how this goes? And this is what she's describing in her story, and it's the classic Keeping Up with the Joneses. But the way that she described it in the story was very profound, because what she felt as they continued to go through this was a hollowness within her. Something's missing. Something's missing in my life. What is that? And when she began to look around her life, and she and her husband talked, that the children are the priority. The children are the priority. But they were never there. Classic story, right? We've all heard it or seen the movie. And they were missing the kids' school activities. They were missing the conversations at the dinner table. They were missing their children's lives. So they realized that their intentions were not in alignment with their actions. We talked all last month about intentions and how we need to align our actions and our intentions, right? And that's what she realized, that was not the case. And this is about the time that she heard about the Hunger Project and its mission in the world to cure or to put out hunger around the world. It's a global vision to just end hunger. And that resonated with her at a very deep level, because she just could not fathom that people would not have enough to eat. So she began to get involved with that mission and with them she and her husband back in the 70s. So about 40 years that she's been involved in this group and working with it. One of the gifts that she realized that she had to bring and share was her connections. So there was a little divine plan at work there, wasn't there? And aligning all those steps so that she had all those connections of wealth and power and corporations and so forth, that she could then tap into that resource to help in her fund generation. That's the role that she took, fund generation for the Hunger Project. So one of her first trips to India was about 10 years after she had gotten into her fundraising activities. She started in the U.S., easy, right? Not too hard. Canada, Europe. But then she began to go to other parts of the world and ended up in India. And she said as she got off of the plane and into the airport, anybody been to India? I've only read about it, I've not been there, but they say there is so much dense population there that there's people everywhere, that it's very, for Americans like you guys are pretty spread out this morning, in India, there'd be 3 to a chair. I mean, it's just very, very tight with people. And that she was overwhelmed by that, and then by the street beggars that were there, that were pulling on her and asking for money. And as she's walking down the street, she's with the CEO of a very prominent corporation there. And she said she was amazed that she was being tugged on and he wasn't being touched, and he was actually stepping over people on the sidewalks and things. And that she was just in this really odd space of what is happening here. Until he began to explain to her that begging in India is an industry. It's an industry, and it's like an underground industry that's got almost like mafia type connections within it. And he said that it came about as an industry through their old caste system. Now, back in the 80s when she had this experience, it was much more prevalent than it is today. They're beginning to heal that, but it's centuries old, so it's not healing quickly. But if you were born of this caste, that was where you lived your life. If you were born of this caste, then you lived in this life. And if you were born as a beggar in India, that's where you lived. And the parents, many times, as an act of love for their children to make them the most successful beggars they could be, would deform them in some way. Hard to take, isn't it? To imagine. But from the perspective of where they were, to make their children have the most successful begging career that they could, they would disfigure or disform them in some way. So this was her first realization of the way that we harm ourselves for money on the lowest side of the scale, in the poverty side of the scale. That was her first experience with that. On another trip, she was there and she was able to meet with Mother Teresa. She was raised Catholic, so Mother Teresa was a very special saint to her. And she was able to meet with her in Calcutta and tour the orphanage and so forth. While she's in the meeting, this extremely wealthy couple came into the orphanage demanding to see Mother Teresa, demanding a photograph. We just saw you, we just had our meeting, we forgot our photograph, we need our photograph, demanding that Lynn take this picture. She got so mad, Lynn did, that they would treat Mother Teresa in this way. And Mother Teresa took the pictures and so forth and sat back down and finished the conversation with Lynn. But Lynn was so angry, so filled with hatred towards those rich people and their rudeness and their disrespect for Mother Teresa, that she couldn't be present in the rest of the conversation with her. She got back to her hotel, she wrote a note to Mother Teresa begging her forgiveness, telling her what had happened, the hatred that she had in her heart, asking her to pray for her. About 2 weeks later, Mother Teresa sent her a note admonishing her for thinking that way. Admonishing her for thinking that way and saying to her, it's easy for you to express your compassion for the poor, the sick, and the faint, and the weak. Your heart is easily there. And the vicious cycle of poverty has been clearly articulated and is widely known. What is less obvious and goes almost completely unacknowledged is the vicious cycle of wealth. This from Mother Teresa. This from Mother Teresa. She says there is no recognition of the trap that wealth so often is. And her message to Lynn said, you must open your heart to them and become their student and their teacher. Open your compassion and include them. This is an important part of your life's work. Don't shut them out. They are also your work. So now she sees the other side of the scale, right? The other side of the scale. Money alone does not guarantee a fulfilling life, and excessive amounts of money more often become an obstacle to a fulfilling life. Again, because of the things that can happen with that, right? So there's a balance in here somewhere. So in India, she discovered the self-destructive things that money creates and that we see here as well, don't we? We see it in this country. Sometimes poverty becomes an excuse for not trying, an excuse for not sharing our gifts, for not playing in a bigger life. Again, we were driving to Mexico, and there's a lot of train tracks between here and there, and we saw a lot of trains coming through. And I was struck by a lot of the graffiti. Almost every car was graffitied with some beautiful artwork. And in thinking about this talk, thinking, wow, somebody went out and acquired paint and had skill and talent to go and paint on those cars some pretty nice-looking artwork, but they were defacing somebody else's property. They were basically being criminals. It's like, why would you do that and not take that talent and skill to someplace else? And it just reminded me of this whole talk of and I'm making an assumption here that the people that did that would be in poverty, but I don't know that. I realize right now I'm making an assumption about that. But why wouldn't they use that for a more productive delivery. We see it in the wealthy. We see it in the wealthy. We've seen it, unfortunately, with Whitney Houston, Jim Belushi, Michael Jackson, where they were use their wealth and access to self-destruct. So the principles about how we value money and what we may be willing to do for it are universal on both ends of the spectrum. We see it in our country, we see it around the world. So the question again is, what is your current perspective on that for you? Do you think it would be important to know that? Maybe? No? Yes? Maybe? What judgments do you have? And we know in Science of Mind what those things become, right? The hidden beliefs that we have. What is your perspective about the wealthy? About wealthy people? About poor people? Middle class? About your own current financial condition? When you look at your bank statement, how do you feel? Your investment statement, in your wallet, do you see just credit cards and massive debt? Do you see cash? Do you see excitement, enthusiasm? What do you see? How do you feel around your own personal financial situation today? Because we know, right, what we're thinking about today is manifesting in our tomorrows. So it's important to know how we feel about our stuff today, isn't it? Lynn says that for many of us, the relationship with money is a deeply conflicted one, and our behavior with and around money is often at odds with our most deeply held values, commitments, and ideals. Would you agree? Yeah, we can be in conflict with that. And she calls this our soul. It's an interesting definition that she has. She says the soul is what deeply matters to human beings. Human beings, not individual. Our most universal soulful commitments and core values is the well-being of the people we love. It's the well-being of ourselves, and it's the well-being of the world in which we live in. And she says, we really do want a world that works for everyone. And I was delighted to see that in her book. Because as you know, that is part of our mission statement here at Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living, and it's also at the Centers for Spiritual Living Global Vision as well. A world that works for all. A world that works for all. Do you think that's attainable? Do you think that's attainable? Yeah. Well, it must begin with each one of us, right? It must begin with each one of us. And these prosperity principles, the law of attraction, the science of mind, and the soul of money, these things can help us to understand that there are other ways to experience this currency that we call money. It was invented 2,500 to 3,500 years ago as a method of exchange. If I have a broken cart and a chicken, Ron can fix my cart and he'll take my chicken. So there you go. It's a barter exchange, right? It's a barter exchange. That's how we started. And then we started using shells and ingots and all sorts of other things. And then we started assigning all this value to these things, right? Well, that's worth 2 chickens. That's not worth just 1 chicken. That's worth 2 chickens. I'm going to fix my roof. That's probably 10 chickens, right? We start assigning more and more value to the services and the exchange. Until today, we have the system that we have. Anybody doing Bitcoin? Anybody understand Bitcoin? Right? What's that about? I don't even understand that one. So we've assigned not only economic value and importance, but we've assigned personal value and cultural worth, have we not? Yeah. Yeah, we have. Many of us have judged ourselves according to our bank or investment statements. Our credit rating. Anybody remember those days? What's your credit score? 600, 700, 800? Or how much debt we have. We've had a big conversation in the past few years about student loan debt, right? And the students are coming out with so much debt that they're carrying on their back that they can't quite get started in life. And it hit me this morning as I was thinking about this that if you remember many of us do, the recession and how easy it was to get mortgage money, right? My nail tech was buying 3 houses in Maricopa. I'm like, how can she do that on her salary? I don't understand it, right? I didn't my real estate mind didn't compute and make sense to me how she could do that. And I think a lot of that translated into student loans as well, that they were just able, it was so accessible that we were able to get ourselves into trouble. We were able to get ourselves into trouble. And then we compare to each other, right? We compare to each other. We look at how much money so-and-so has, or the lifestyle of the rich and famous, right? We don't have that. We don't have the private island and the private airplane. We just have a little house right here in Scottsdale, right? Now, I know that our Science of Mind centers, and most of you have practiced prosperity principles. You know this stuff, right? Yes, we know this stuff. She's preaching to the choir. I've read the chapter 19 in the Science of Mind text. It's all about the law of attraction. I say my affirmations, right? I do the Money Finders program, yes. And I know when life happens that we can fall right back into our old beliefs, can't we? We can. When things like recession or unexpected expenses pop up, or our channel of supply changes a little bit, the job changes, or the investment's no longer paying as much as it was, or the stock market drops a little bit, we can go right back into those childhood fears, can't we? Money doesn't grow on trees. It's always something. There's never enough. And that's the way we know when we're there. So those cliches start to run around in our head again, don't they? Those cliches start to run around in our head again. So how can we break the cycle? That's really what you want to know, isn't it? How do I stop this crazy train in my head? Science of Mind 101. What's Ernest say? Change your thinking, change your life. Change your thinking, change your life. So it's through a shift in perspective about money. It's through a shift in our perspective about money, about the value and the expenditure of our own time, talent, and treasure. Because that's the barter, isn't it? Our time and our talent is bartered in exchange for the treasure, right? And getting our perspective straightened out about that. Doesn't matter if you have $100 or $100,000. It's all the perspective and the meaning that that has to you. I want you to imagine $1 million. Everybody got it? $1 million. And I come in and I go, "Would you give me $1?" Sure. Easy breezy. I got plenty, right? Imagine you're living on the street. You have no source of income. You have $2. I ask you for one. You might be as generous. Then again, you might not. I hope none of us is ever in that position to answer that question. But again, it's perspective, isn't it? It's perspective and what we value. Does that $2 have any more or less value than that $1 million? You know, in that moment, to those two people, the $2 probably has more value, doesn't it? There's a heck of a lot less of it. Yeah. So understanding our personal values around money, what it is to us and what it's not to us. Both sides of that coin are important, aren't they? What it is and what it's not to us. And going deeper into our belief system. Understanding that, yeah, I got the prosperity principles. I've read Catherine Ponder. I know all about that stuff. But when something happens and it shakes us up and all those things start rattling around in our head and we go into fear and we go into hoarding, that's when the deeper work happens, isn't it? You guys are all pros at the Science of Mind stuff. I get that. You come every week. But going deeper when life shakes us up a little bit, stuff happens. That's where Science of Mind still serves us. Because the teaching is so rich that we can continue to go deeper and deeper into it to find richer and richer answers. any time life shakes us up a little bit. So this is where we begin to open ourselves up to the spiritual journey with our money and with our soul. We begin to see money for the tool that it is in supporting that exchange of goods and services, not worth and privilege. That's the distinction, isn't it? We've associated money with worth and privilege as opposed to an exchange of goods and services. If money was no object, what would you really be, do, and support? The deeper work and spiritual exploration of money begins here, doesn't it? It's kind of the jumping off spot where we begin to look deeper. So we're going to look at some practicing the principles for ideas on how we can begin this journey that we're going to be taking for the next 3 weeks now. Number 1, watch your judgments about money this week. Watch your judgments about money this week. People with it and people without it, right? Both sides of that spectrum. If you see someone begging, notice, what's your judgment? If you see someone that's homeless, notice, what are you thinking? If you see someone driving a Bentley, notice what you're thinking. Notice what you're thinking. These judgments are a reflection of your values and your beliefs. That first initial thing that pops up, when you catch that, will help you to understand your values. And remember that you may be in high consciousness now with what you think and where you're going, but there's still stuff that can be hidden here, can't there? And when you see that guy driving the Bentley or that homeless person begging and those instant things come up, like, whoa, where did that come from? That's that old stuff, isn't it? That's that old stuff. That's not who I am today. But guess what? When you catch it right there, that's when you can heal it. That's when you can heal it. And that's the beautiful part about it. So watch your judgments about money this week. Number 2, put your money where your mouth is. Are your actions consistent with your intentions? Are your actions consistent with your intentions? And this is our standard walk your talk principle, isn't it? Standard principle. But how would I apply that in my money and finances? How would I apply that? Do you support causes and people and places with your time, talent, and treasure? Or is it just idle conversation? Oh yeah, I'm an environmentalist. I won't sort my trash at home. I use only plastic bottles. I buy only plastic stuff, right? This is the way we get into alignment with that which we value. What means a lot to you? Homelessness, animals, the environment, this center, education, empowerment of people, hunger, something else. What means a lot to you? Is that where you choose to invest? Is that what you choose to support? Pay attention this week. Are you walking your talk around your money? It's a tool, right? It's a tool to support your vision, your goals, your commitments, your soul's journey. It's a tool. Number 3, look for ways that money can express your soul commitments. I want to invite you to take one day this week, one day, and actively look for little ways that you can express your soul commitments. Look for ways to support the well-being of the people that you love. Look for ways to support yourself. And look for ways to create a world that works for all. One day. Just one day. Look for ways. So money is a tool, not an idol. It's just a tool. And whether it's a weapon or a shield is up to us, isn't it? It's up to us how we choose to use it. When we can become more clear in the spiritual purpose of our lives, of money, we can then take back our power, we can take back our authority over it, no longer allow it to control us, no longer allow the fear to be in our lives. even if it's just a little bit. Because that's a creative power, isn't it? Fear is a creative power. We understand that God is our source. A lot of channels, but one source. And when we can remember that, that's when we can begin to bring our soul to our money and our money to our soul. So thank you for being with us. May you know peace and prosperity in all areas of your life this week and this month. So I would invite you to join me in an affirmative prayer this morning as we anchor this today. So how good it is that we can come together on Sunday morning in celebration of this thing called life, and recognizing that there is that one source, the infinite, the divine, spirit, essence, presence, God, the one substance from which all things are made manifest. One. And all of that is here now present in this room, in, through, and as me, as a manifestation of it, individualized and unique in that expression, and yet having all of the ability as far as wisdom and access to that at any time into that one mind. And as I know this truth for myself, I know that for each one of us, we're all individual expressions of spirit, of source, of that one substance, all within it. And I know, too, that money is of God. It is a divine tool. The wisdom that came through to the first humans who began to create that system of exchange of goods and services out of convenience was a divine idea in the mind of God. And everything that's happened to it in its history has been a divine idea in the mind of God that has come forth through human creation. And here we are today. And we bless this thing called money in our lives, knowing that it is a divine inspiration. And that idea of exchange and circulation is also a law of the universe and a divine idea. So in this moment, I bless each one of us and our financial abundance, our prosperity, our prosperous thinking, and the lives that we are creating for ourselves, allowing this powerful presence in our lives to bring forth the wisdom, the intelligence, and aligning our intentions and our actions in every area of our lives. And I know for anyone that has anything on their heart this day that they're seeking prayer around, that as they lift that into their conscious awareness this morning, that we bring forward a healing, a revealing, a flow of prosperity, a flow of money, whatever the need may be in this moment, whatever the healing may be. We know that that is brought forward in this moment, that it is done as we believe. So it is with great gratitude and a grateful heart that I just sent this into the action of universal mind, knowing that it is already done, it's already made manifest in that mind of God. We just await its manifestation in form. So please affirm with me this morning, and so it is.